No sooner has a temporary peace been declared in the Middle East than America has not one, but two leaked text scandals to chew over. Amazing. Now, almost no matter what is in the leaked text, a leaked text scandal is a fun scandal because it's inherently salacious. People text under the false presumption that what they're writing is private, and so they relax, they're unguarded. And very often, however, they're wrong, and those texts come out. It's happened to me. And what you learn when you read them is what people are saying and presumably thinking in private. So it's kind of a window into a person's private life. It's very much like a sex tape, and it's irresistible. Everybody loves a leaked text scandal. What's interesting, really, is are they meaningful? Does it actually tell you something about the person who's texting? Well, that all depends on the context. There are plenty of things you text throughout the course of a day if you're an average American that really don't reflect a lot about who you really are or what you really think, much less what you intend to do. If you text, "That girl's so hot," do you plan to sleep with her? Maybe, maybe not. In fact, likely not. But the presumption to many readers is that you do, so it's misleading inherently. If you say something really ugly, does that mean you're an ugly person? Well, that all depends. How vehemently did you say it? Did you repeat it? Did you explain why you thought it? Again, context really matters, and leaked text can be grossly unfair and misleading to the person from whom they're leaked because they don't actually reveal the character of the texter. And moreover, by the way, who wants to be reduced to his ugliest text? Not many of us. But they're still interesting, and they can reveal a lot about the people who sent them. So let's go in order through the details of the two leaked text scandals now roiling this country, because not simply the text, but the response to the texts tells you a lot about the state of American politics, and particularly about the differences between the two major parties in how they responded. So first up, the Republican scandal. And it comes to us from Telegram, which is a supposedly pretty secure texting app. And we're going to read some of them. So these kids were texting to each other. These are young Republicans texting each other on a group chat on Telegram. This somehow wound up on Politico. And they are saying things like this. They're referring to African Americans as, quote, the watermelon people. Here's someone else saying that, and we're quoting, everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber. And finally, someone on the group text called someone, and I'm quoting now, retarded. So these are young Republicans from across the country texting each other. They are young men. And you might think at first glance that these are kind of young men texts. These are mildly, or in some cases more than mildly, edgy. And they're kind of showing off to each other. So how bad is this? Well, you probably wouldn't say it at Thanksgiving dinner, but is it a death penalty offense? Well, let's check in with some of the guardians of public morals on the Republican side. First up, this is a statement from the National Young Republican Board of Directors. And we have no idea who these people are, but you can imagine affluent, unmarried gentlemen shepherding these young Republicans through their political growth. I'm not saying they need FBI background checks, but you can just sort of imagine in your mind who these guys are. And we're assuming they're guys. Of course they are. We're quoting, this is their response to these naughty texts leaked to Politico. Quote, we are appalled by the vile and inexcusable language revealed in the Politico article published today. Vile and inexcusable. Such behavior is disgraceful. Not just vile and inexcusable, but disgraceful. It's unbecoming of any Republican, and it stands in direct opposition to the values our movement represents. Bracket, values that are not in any way articulated by the board of the Young Republicans, but whatever, they stand against those values. Those involved must immediately resign from all positions within their state and local Young Republican organizations. We must hold ourselves to the highest standards of integrity, respect, and professionalism. Well, it's an unequivocal statement of disgust. Next up, this is Congressman Mike Lawler. Seems like a nice enough guy from New York. He's a young man whose donors were very offended by this. And so he wrote this, Mike Lawler, acting on behalf of people who pay him money, no question. Quote, the deeply offensive and hateful comments reportedly made in a private chat among members of the New York State Young Republicans are disgusting. Not only deeply offensive and hateful, but disgusting. They should resign from any leadership position immediately and reflect on how far they have strayed from basic human respect and decency. You, sir, the one who called somebody retarded, are indecent. You have strayed from public decency. That is Mike Lawler's position. So these kids, and who knows how old they are, none of them over 30, no question about it, texting each other in the middle of the day, blowing off work on Telegram. These kids should resign their positions, hang their heads in shame, and reflect on the indecency of their text exchange with their buddies. So that's the position of official Republicandom to these boys. If you didn't know better, you might think that the whole purpose of being an official Republican is to keep your party within certain bounds, not of decency, no, but certain bounds whose rules are written maybe by the other party. This looks a lot like gatekeeping, not the preservation of decency. Why do we think that? Well, because there is widespread indecent behavior among Republican officials. Not just indecent sexual behavior, though doubtless that exists too, but out in the open, public indecency. For example, people taking money from the payday loan lobby. Yes, that happens. Or from foreign governments. That happens too. Or openly advocating for pointless wars in which Americans get killed for no reason, in which our treasury is drained on behalf of somebody else, not us. There are plenty of Republicans who support all of that. Lindsey Graham, for example. How many American deaths would you estimate Lindsey Graham is responsible for? Not simply as a man who frequently articulates the need to go die for some other country, but as a man who votes to start wars that get Americans killed. Has Mike Lawler denounced him as indecent? Should he be reflecting upon his sins? Nope. Lindsey Graham is a Republican elder in good standing, beloved by everybody because he's funny. What about the Republicans who constantly telling us that we need to pledge allegiance to a foreign country? Are those people traitors? Have they committed an indecent act? No, they're all totally fine. But according to Mike Lawler and the board of the National Young Republicans organization, these kids are done. So the response, and that's the interesting part of this story, really, not the fact that someone got called retarded or said someone should go to the gas chambers, but the response was quick and it was unequivocal. The party will not tolerate this, the Republican Party. And what's interesting about this story is that it appeared against the backdrop of a bigger and longer story, one that began at the beginning of this month out of Virginia, where there's a very tight race for attorney general. It's one of those positions that very few people outside of politics consider important, but within politics is considered the key position in any state. It's the head lawyer in the state. That person has an awful lot of power. And the race in Virginia includes the Republican incumbent standing up against a 36-year-old man called Jay Jones. Jay Jones is a former delegate in the Virginia House. And a few years ago, Jay Jones became very annoyed, apparently, with the head Republican in the House of Delegates. And he expressed his anger at this man in a text exchange with a Republican delegate, interesting, with a woman. And that text exchange unfolded this way. Now, I'm going to read this verbatim, and you can decide whether this is lacking context or not. So this is Jay Jones, the 36-year-old then delegate, black guy, now running for attorney general. And he's talking about a man called Todd Gilbert, the head Republican in the Virginia House. And he says of Gilbert, and he's speaking to Kerry Conyer, who's a fellow delegate, a Republican, he says, if these guys go before me, if they die before me, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves, send them out awash in something. To which Kerry Conyer, clearly is kind of a decent person, says, Jay Jones. And then Jones responds this way, 3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. Jay, says Kerry Conyers, please stop. Jay says, LOL, okay. Then she says, it really bothers me when you talk about hurting people or wishing death on them. It isn't okay, no matter who they are. So at this point, she calls him. Kerry Conyers calls Jay Jones and says, I'm really bothered by our text exchange. Do you mean that? Do you really wish death on the head Republican in the House? And Jay Jones says, not only do I wish death on him and his wife, I also wish death on their children. He says that. And we know he says it because he repeats it in this text exchange, which followed their phone conversation. She says this to Jay Jones. You weren't simply asking questions and you know it, Jones. I genuinely was. I wasn't attacking you. I was trying to understand your logic. She says, you weren't trying to understand. You were hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children would die. To which you would expect Jay Jones to say, I don't want our kids to die. I was just trying to make a rhetorical point, right? No. Jay Jones says, yes, I do want them to die. I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. To which Conyer says, I point blank asked you more than 3 times and you dug in that you meant it. I'm honestly questioning a lot today. And he writes back in the clearest sentence ever uttered in a private text exchange. I mean, I do think Todd and Jennifer are evil and they're breeding little fascists. Yes, I think that. They're evil and they're breeding little fascists who deserve to die. This is not one of those text exchanges where you have to guess at the context or the intent. This is an exchange between 2 people, one of whom is calling for the murder of children, and the other is trying really hard from the context here to talk him out of thinking that. You don't really mean that, do you, Jay Jones? Yes, I do. Yes, I do mean that. Now, there are so many levels of irony here. The most obvious is this is a leading Democrat who wants to be the chief law enforcement officer in the state, who is a gun control advocate calling for the murder of kids, okay? And calling for the murder of kids because they're related to adults he doesn't like. This is African ethics. This is the Hutu mentality. This is guilt by blood. There is nothing less Western than this. This is the idea that you are tainted or you're virtuous because of how you were born. This is a collective understanding of the world. This is tribal. And if you think it through, this is what identity politics inexorably leads to. It leads toward giving some people rewards and others very dire punishments based on how they look and based on who their parents are. There is nothing less Western than this, but Jay Jones embraces it completely. And the man that he's talking about, by the way, Todd Gilbert, then the head Republican, is not famous as some kind of firebrand. He's just sort of a normal guy. So what is going on here exactly? What's going on here is what we see all around us. You have 2 parties, one of which is committed to polite language, and the other is committed to following the logic of their own belief, identity politics being the core belief of the Democratic Party, to its logical extension. And the logical extension is some groups get the rewards and other groups get killed. This is the logic of a lot of the world, by the way. It's the logic of Africa, all of Africa. It's the logic of the Middle East. It is not the logic of America, of our politics, of our civil society, of our religion. It's the opposite. So why did it take leaked text exchanges for us to find this out? We're going to speak to the head Republican in the House of Delegates in Virginia in a minute and ask. But there are a couple other things to point out. This man, Jay Jones, is almost a perfect representative of his party. He is black, and because he has very often been the victim of racism because that's what it is to be black in America. You don't get a fair shot. No one takes you seriously. You're constantly being attacked. And he's talked about this quite a bit. Here is Jay Jones talking about his experience as a black man in America.
All across this Commonwealth, whether it's a Confederate flag hanging on the highways here in the Commonwealth, whether it is our restrictive voting laws that we've worked to update in the legislature. We've got so much work to do. We know that our system is inequitable and unjust. If you've ever been to a correctional facility or a jail in this Commonwealth, you'll see that the faces are predominantly black and brown. That doesn't make any sense. We've got to make sure we update this system, start from scratch to make sure that it's going to work for every single person. As a black Virginian who has experienced racism and discrimination firsthand, I know what this is all about.
So that's the thing about Jay Jones. He's seen racial discrimination firsthand. In the state where he lives, literally in his state, there was a person who had a Confederate flag. So he's lived it. I mean, it's not crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge to face off fire hoses, but it's pretty close. Someone flew a Confederate flag in his state. Here he is again. This is another quote from him, which I'll read. This is Jay Jones during the Ralph Northam, former Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, blackface scandal, when it turned out that Ralph Northam had worn blackface at a party in college decades before. Literally true. Ralph Northam was also openly for infanticide, not a problem. But he wore blackface at a party once, and no one was more rattled, almost undone by this than Jay Jones. Listen to Jay Jones at the time. To me, and many people like me, these events are a window into a struggle that defines daily life for African Americans from the day we are born until the day we die. And despite the generations of suffering and sacrifice, my own life has been impacted by the overt and covert racism that has haunted my ancestors for hundreds of years. And it wasn't always overt racism thrown in my face. It was the casual racism, the subtle comments, the jokes from white acquaintances who had the luxury of thinking about race as fodder for humor. The Black Virginia that is still oppressed by vestiges of Jim Crow in our legal system, that fears law enforcement, is mocked in yearbooks and photos year after year after year, and looks skeptically at white Virginia because of the generations past. So you can see Jay Jones has felt the pain. He's felt the sting, the bullwhip on his shoulders, the German shepherds at his heels, fighting for equality in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And you know that from the world he grew up in. Jay Jones is the grandson of a prominent lawyer in Norfolk. Jay Jones's father went to boarding school in Princeton. He became a judge, just like Jay Jones's mother. Jay Jones went to the most expensive private school in Norfolk. Then he went from there to William and Mary, and then he was forced to endure the University of Virginia Law School. Now, we haven't seen the deal he cut with financial aid, but we can guess he probably paid nothing for any of that. And that's the racism he has felt. Now, the man he's attacking, by the way, the man whose children he would like to murder, went to public school. The white guy, he went to public school. He's not the grandson of a rich lawyer. His dad did not go to Princeton. He's not the son of two judges. But he is a white guy, therefore he's the oppressor. This is a very familiar script. You thought it ended when cancel culture went away, but of course cancel culture didn't go anywhere. It's in full force, and it always will be until it's smashed. Why? Well, because it's the source of power. It's the source of moral authority. Victimhood is power. And so the one thing that you can't give up is your victimhood. And that's how we wound up at this very weird place that we are now, where the richest and most entitled people in our society, the people who've derived the greatest benefits from our society, persist in telling you day after day that they are the oppressed. They need security. People are being mean to them. Oh, I've got to have security. You better pay for it, by the way, because your rhetoric has endangered me. You don't know the pain that I suffer with. Billionaires say this all the time. People like Jay Jones, coddled, growing up not in the hood, but in a household of two judges, one of whom went to Princeton, going probably for free to the local white private school. This guy is telling you that he's Medgar Evers. And the thing is, this is 70 years after Brown versus Board of Education. 70 years since the Supreme Court banned segregation. And here's this guy, the product of the best Norfolk has to offer, again, probably for free, someone ought to ask him, is telling us that he's a victim. So if 70 years later, politicians are still saying that, then you're starting to figure out that this will never end because it's the key to their power over you. The second interesting thing about what Jay Jones says, which I think any normal person would say is instantly disqualifying, it's not an offhand remark about how someone's retarded or should go to the gas chamber. By the way, not just the gas chamber at Auschwitz, but just the gas chamber. Could be the California penal gas chamber, not specified, but whatever. The kid said it, ugly thing to say, shouldn't have said it. But that kid is being written out of Republican politics, and this guy, who has two separate long text exchanges and a phone call where a Republican friend is trying to talk him out of genocidal intent, says again and again and again, no, I want to kill the children. because they're little fascists because of the blood in their veins or the color of their skin or whatever. They're in the wrong tribe. They should be killed. That's pretty heavy. And for a chief law enforcement officer of a major American state, that is disqualifying. If that's not disqualifying, then nothing is disqualifying. Has Jay Jones been disqualified? No, he could win. He could win the election. Early voting is in progress right now. Of course, that's the point of early voting. It's to make sure people vote before they know anything. He could win. And one of the reasons he could win is because the Democratic Party of Virginia and nationally has formed a phalanx around him to protect him. The Black Caucus of Virginia, elected black legislators in Virginia, because he's in their tribe, are defending him flat out. But Trump is bad, they say. Trump is bad. Really? Has Trump called for the children of Americans he disagreed with to be murdered because they're related to people he disagrees with? Probably not. And if he ever does do that, every normal person will call for him to step down because that is disqualifying. But according to the Black Caucus of Virginia, no, Jay Jones, good enough. And it's not just on a statewide level. It's at the national level. Here's Nancy Pelosi defending Jay Jones. Watch.
There is a Democrat running for attorney general who's embroiled in a scandal over text messages in which he, the Democrat, said that the GOP Speaker of the House of Delegates should get 2 bullets to the head for how he paid tribute to a former moderate Democratic lawmaker who died. He has apologized. Should he get out of the race?
Well, that's up to the people, the leaders in Virginia. They have said he has apologized. What I understand is they say that on balance, he's a better person to be attorney general.
He's a better, in what sense, Ms. Former Speaker, is this man a better choice to be attorney general of the state of Virginia? Of course, no one will ever ask her that. You'll notice that CNN truncated the quotes where he's kind of offering up some rhetorical, if you had 2 bullets, who would you kill? And left out the part where he says we should kill the children too. And he goes full Hutu, full African, and says we should kill the children, because they're little fascists, because their parents are fascists. Kill the wife, kill the boar, kill the farmer. That's what that is. That's kill the boar, kill the farmer. CNN left that out, of course. But Nancy Pelosi just says, well, he's better. Well, in what sense is he better? How could anything be worse than that? And the answer is, of course, abortion, another form of killing. That's all they care about. They want the ritual to continue. And somewhere in her reptile brain, she understands that a Democratic AG will be more likely to protect abortion than a Republican. And that's it. That's the only issue that matters. That's the only domestic issue that matters. It's neocon foreign policy and abortion. That's all that matters to the Republican Party, because that's all that matters to its donors. And both are incredibly dark. Both are about killing. That's what connects them. Neocon foreign policy, kill them. Abortion, kill them. And both make the people who espouse them feel like God. That's the appeal. They're not policies, they're rituals. They're Canaanite rituals. Of course, they're sacrifices. But that's the most important thing. And it's so important to her and to her party that she's willing to be a little bit embarrassed. I'm sure part of her, she grew up Catholic in Baltimore 80 years ago. Part of her is thinking, ugh, kill the children? Can we really support that? And then those instincts are overridden by what she knows to be true, which is anything that jeopardizes abortion must be stopped, no matter what. Most coffee companies sell weakness, watered-down drinks from faceless corporations that don't care about you or your family. Black Rifle, which, not to brag, is in this cup right here, is very different. It's roasted and brewed in this country without apology by patriotic men and women. The coffee is built by people who love the U.S. and know what it means to fight for it. We know them. We know the guys who run it. We've known them for a long time, and we know this is true. They're special forces veterans, ranchers, just decent people. They're the best of us, and the coffee is strong. The energy drinks, ooh, even stronger. It's not sugar water, not empty marketing. Fuel for people who get up early, work late, keep this nation running. Every purchase helps support veterans, first responders, law enforcement. From bold roast to ready-to-drink cans, mugs, T-shirts, gear, Black Rifle makes products with pride. Can a lot of companies say that? No, they can't. Visit blackrifle.com. Use code Tucker for 30% off your first order. That's blackriflecoffee.com. Code Tucker, or pick it up at your local convenience or grocery store. You will love it. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.